this video, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen to the market if Trump wins, and I'm going to tell you what's going to happen to the market if Biden wins. So the election is just around the corner. If you're on social media at all, you know that to be true. So we might be wondering what's going to happen to our world, to our society, or what's going to happen to the economy or the stock market, depending on who wins. Now, there's a lot of things that people may think of whenever they hear the word market. So for the purposes of this video, when you hear me say market, just know that I'm referring to the stock market. We're not going to talk about the economy as a whole, but we're going to be talking about the stock market, which is what most people's investment portfolios are invested in. Another thing we need to know about the market is that the market is typically a leading indicator. Meaning if they believe something is going to happen, they're going to build in the activity or the pricing earlier, before it happens. If they know something is going to go on in the government, or if they know something is going to go on in the business world as a whole, people are going to start buying or selling stocks well before it happens. So here we are, just a few weeks away from the election. We should be able to see the stock market moving heavily one way or the other based on what they think is going to happen. But if we look at the market over the past couple of weeks, it hasn't really moved a ton up or down. It's been fairly consistent in how it has been going up or down. So let's look at the stock market over the last couple of weeks to see what's been going on. Well, if we look at the stock market, let's just say the Dow Jones, that's typically what people see. Over the past, let's just go month, it's kind of been fairly consistent, hovering between 29 and 27.2. That's up and down, fairly consistent. If we go even further, just in the past week, it's been hovering between 26.8 and 27.7, up or down 1,000 points here or there. But that tells us what's happening right now before this election. Well, what can we learn about what happened in the previous election? Well, let's go back 5 years. If we see there at the beginning of this graph, there's a 2016. That's when Trump was elected. Well, prior to the election, there was a little bit of movement, but again, just before the election, it was fairly consistent. There was a little up and a little down, but the biggest things that we're seeing on this graph, again, is when the coronavirus recession happened. Not a ton that we can see from the election. Okay, let's go back again. Maybe if we look back even further, we'll find some data that'll be helpful to us. So let's go 10 years. All right, so 2016, that's when Trump was elected. Now let's think about 2012 when Obama was elected. Well, again, we're looking on this graph, and it's not a huge up or down. Whenever he was put in for his second term, things were fairly consistent. So what are we learning through all of this? Well, here's a hard truth you may not want to hear. The stock market doesn't care who the president is. Now, I know you may have heard your uncle talk at a birthday party or barbecue, or you yourself might have been golfing and heard somebody on the tee box talk about how they know which way the market's going to go as a result of Trump winning or Biden winning. And as a result, they're giving you advice that you need to sell or that you need to buy. Because if you do, you'll be able to take advantage of this great opportunity that we have ahead of us in the market as a result of the election. All that, it's false. As we just looked at, whether it was Trump winning or Obama winning in his second term, the market didn't really move crazy in one direction or the other. But when did it move? It was the coronavirus that saw the biggest spikes, the biggest decreases in the market. Here's a truth. The stock market doesn't care about elections. What it really cares about is uncertainty. Again, let's go back and look at the coronavirus. Whenever the coronavirus first started and we started seeing it on the news that there was this virus and it was coming from China, even when the president said, hey, we're going to stop allowing people to fly into our country that are from China, the market didn't really respond. It didn't really care. But as soon as lockdowns, as soon as this whole stay home period happened, that created a lot of uncertainty. When were businesses going to be able to open back up? How long were these businesses going to go without income while we were staying home? Which businesses were going to do well and which businesses were not? That type of uncertainty caused a huge panic, which then caused that coronavirus recession. President Trump didn't create the coronavirus. Even you conspiracy theorists out there, that's not reality. Even if we look backwards, President Bush didn't create the terrorist attacks. He didn't create the tech bubble. Obama didn't create the housing bubble of that Great Recession of 2008. You see, whenever the market makes a big move one way or the other, it has nothing to do with the president. It has to do with the uncertainty. Now, you might have an argument that says, well, Grant, there's a lot of uncertainty to me. If Biden wins, we don't know how the economy is going to react. We don't know how our country is going to react. And if Trump gets in for a second term, that's a lot of uncertainty also. How is our society going to act? The market doesn't have uncertainty about that. They are certain about this one thing, that regardless of whoever the president is, it'll be just fine. Now, the overarching belief is that if the Republicans do well, if they win, then our economy will do well. And if the Democrats win and do well, then our economy won't do well. As a result, the market will respond one way or the other. And if I'm honest with you, I think I had some of those biases myself at some point. But if you look at the data, you see that regardless of whichever party won the presidential election or whomever was in that presidential seat, the economy basically responded the same way. If you look back all the way to when Clinton won, the economy did really, really well. There was a really good return. And if you look back to when Reagan won, again, the economy did well. There was a decent return. You could look back to almost every recent president's tenure and see that the economy pretty much did well, except when there was uncertainty. Terrorist attacks, 9/11, that didn't go well. Obama's presidency, the 2008 recession with the housing bubble, that didn't go well. And even in this last 4 years, specifically this year of 2020, the coronavirus recession, that didn't go well. It all has to do with uncertainty that's not related to the president. So based on all this information, the fact that we know the market is a leading indicator, so it's forward thinking, the fact that we know regardless of what party is in office or whichever party wins the election, that the market isn't really going to care. What's the delivery on the promise I made at the beginning of this video? Well, here it is. If Biden wins the election, the market will likely return about 10.3%. If Trump wins the election, the market will likely return 10.3%. You guys, I can say that with confidence because no matter who was the president, the average return in the market was about 10.3%. And it happened whether it was a Democratic president or a Republican president. It happened regardless of who was in office. All right, I'm just going to get real with you for a second. It's a lot more fun to be able to guess the market and time it, especially if you win. Look, if you follow your uncle's advice when he says, hey, you got to make sure you sell like crazy or buy like crazy because he believes so-and-so is going to win and this is going to happen to the market, if you win with that, it feels really, really great. But the truth, you probably don't hear from your uncle whenever he guesses wrong. And that's just something about us as human beings. We love to talk about it when we can say, I knew I was right. But how many times are people yelling on social media or talking about it at a barbecue when they say, I was wrong? It just doesn't happen. The wise thing to do with your 401k, with your retirement account, with your investments that are in the market, stick to the plan. Don't worry about who's going to win the election. It will not have a big impact on your investment portfolio over the long term. Now, I just did some high-level views of what you can expect with the market if Biden wins or if Trump wins. But if you're looking for more information, even more details, I want to invite you to check out our most recent podcast on the Defining Stewardship podcast, or even our blog at stewardship.pro/blog. There, Jake wrote a blog where he went in detail about this particular topic, and there'll be some graphs and information that you can look at. And then in the podcast, Jeremy and I had a really great conversation about this. We went into even more detail and even looked at some things in the previous history. The cool part about the podcast is I was able to ask Jeremy questions, and he responded as a wise financial advisor and a really great perspective. So check both the blog and the podcast out for yourself.